second. All right. Make sure I got tools and everything ready to go. All right. Get on screen. Oh no, that's a bad sign. Yeah, yawning already. We'll be all right. Start with a little cleanup here real quick. People get on here. We'll get going. Clean some of the moss off, reveal some of the roots, check out what's going on. That's too good. That's better. Now I can see a little bit better too. Alright, so I've got a couple junipers here just to show kind of when you've got raw material. One thing you need to keep in mind is the size of the tree you want to create. I've got something like this, obviously it's going to be fairly large, but with this, you know, it's a rather small cup. The trunk size is moderately, you know, it's decent. We'll look at that later. But do you want to create something, you want to let this grow out, become something larger, maybe medium sized, even go this far years, or do you want to prune it back and really rein it in into something nice, Shohin size, compact? So that actually needs a quick little prune there, maybe. And rein it in. Really intricate trunk line, little gin here, fun little tree. But that's the major consideration when you sit down with a piece of material that's raw nursery stock, is where do you want it to end up, right? You have variable sizes to deal with. Sometimes when it's something like this, you may or may not know what the trunk looks like. So ideally, if you're shopping for it, then you'll work down into it. This was given to me by a good friend of mine, and so working with material like that, just check out what it is underneath. So you go through the process of cleaning, checking out the trunk, finding the front or potential front, and then deciding on where you want to go from there. But the cleaning process isn't going to limit you as far as the size goes. But this is probably going to turn into something a little more like this rather than something the size it is now, but we'll see. We'll see. I have another example of, this is just a little green mountain juniper. We're going to be working with Hinoki cypress later on as well. I have another little tiny one of those. Really nice tree. It's a fun tree, but we're working with a larger one, so we'll see the transformation there as well to what it can turn into. So, just wanted to share that with y'all real quick. All right, so we'll set this aside for just a minute because this will kind of go start to finish, and we're just going to go through cleaning this larger juniper. Really nice trunk, a little fissure there. We could open it up as a real shari, but it's probably not going to be a malleable trunk. When we're cleaning, we want to get rid of any dead stuff, and this is a great time to clean your junipers because they love the heat. So as you clean up the pads, do some pruning, you can really set them up. You don't want to be bending and putting on too much wire because of reorienting the foliage. That disappeared off the screen, didn't it? Because of reorienting the foliage with the summer heat. But if you can protect it, that's possible. But the biggest thing is pruning it to get ready for fall styling. That's the key. So making sure what you want, or what is on the tree, is what you want to be on the tree. And all that energy going into that development of good solid foliar pads. If you look here, you'll see it's kind of a bare spot, but all in there, there's a lot of suckers developing. Normally you'd clean those off, but because that's a bare spot, I want all of that growth because it's going to allow me to cut back these branches into these tighter areas. We're going to get a more dense tree. So I was really looking at this one being a little movement back and forth with this thing. I was really looking at this being a long, drawn out tree. Maybe put it upright a little bit, change the angle, or even drop it down. But flip it underneath just a little bit. This trunk goes up, does like a 90-degree angle, and then pretty much goes straight across. There's one nice branch here until it curves back up, and you can tell from the front. I mean, it's just, there's no, if there was some interesting movement in the trunk, it would be better, because then at least you could show off the movement in the trunk. But it really just shoots straight across. And as I was sitting here looking at it, I noticed that all the drama is right here. It comes up the 90-degree that way, but this branch right here comes swooping down, and it really is a nice dramatic standalone tree. So this, we'll work on cleaning it up and see if there's a tree inside there, but this may be the new canopy with this lower branch dropping down. This be a nice little chewing sized tree that really makes a statement, because the trunk is interesting. There's a dead vein that goes right through the center there. So we'll see. We'll see how it turns out. As always, if you have any questions or anything, throw it in the chat. Happy to work through those things. It doesn't have to be about junipers, but it can be. Really doesn't necessarily even have to be about trees, but talk about trees all day. So I'm clearing out the bottom of the pads. The pads that I know are pretty much set. You do have to be prudent about just clearing off and shearing the bottom, because if you're going to wire later and you flip a pad over, you don't want all the foliage to be on one side and none on the other. So think about it. Don't just go in and clear cut everything that's growing off the bottom. But if you can tell that the pad's mostly set, it's a pretty safe bet to go in and take care of that. I'm starting from the outside in. One of the worst things you can do is kind of go in and be like, ah, it's too bushy. I'm gonna start and just shear off all these little branchlets and all this foliage so that I can see the foliar pad at the end. You kind of want to work condensing the tree, because if you go in and you clear out, okay, this is all the little inner growth, that's no good. And then you get to, you turn and you look at your tree, and all of a sudden it's just a clump here, 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 and there's nothing on the interior of the tree. And it's like, oh, whoops, this tree is just a shell. And there's really nothing there for me to work with to make it a tree. I see that happen a lot on deciduous trees, on maples, because people are trying to prevent prevent inverse swelling, and so they clear out all of the little suckers and whatnot, and they pinch the buds, things like that, and they don't realize that if you manage the growth properly, you don't have to worry about the inverse swelling, and you have back buds developing. So some of that comes from experience, some of that comes from being able to really put the time and effort into watching the tree develop from day to day and season to season. So you see a lot of really great Japanese maples, but it's just, pardon me, I'm about to sneeze. It's just a shell of foliage. Hopefully there's some good branching in there, but sometimes it's just thick branches till right at the very end, and you have a bunch of little branches towards the end, and it's just a shell. So it really is a shame sometimes to see potentially world-class material not be used in the right way. And I'm not saying this necessarily is world-class material. It's nice material, but you want to approach everything you do in bonsai with the same, I don't want to say intensity because that makes it sound stressful, with the same attention that you would any other material. So something that you pick up from Home Depot, give it the right attention. Yeah, flex a little bit, see what you do, experiment. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But at the same time, if you do the process and you work through it the right way, then it's going to give you a good reward. So something seemingly inconspicuous can turn into a really nice tree. Just the right amount of time. Yow. Not much sharper than dead juniper foliage. Yowee. Straight spikes. So you kind of see how this is fluffy all around, and you're starting to see the clear delineation of pads through this portion of the tree that I've been working on. Now it really is a shame because it could be nice. It's just, can we pull this down enough? The difficulty is when we pull this down, it doesn't add interest. It doesn't add any interest when we pull this down. Maybe we lose some foliage here, but where this part goes, right? Maybe we start there and it turns into a semi-cascade because we have movement up and down, then back up, and then this branch would be the defining branch there that comes down. There's a little back branch here. Just thinking through it before I go in and just make this the entire tree. But sometimes it's the drama that draws the attention. But if we do something different, it better really make the tree stand out. Come at it from this way. It's just so uninteresting. Maybe it's the same side as the front. Is that any better? But then this is completely vertical. We'd have to move all of these branches down, which is fine, but again, the more we touch the tree, the more we have to keep our hands on the tree, and it's just old stickers on these pots that I've reused again and again and again. Yeah, it's tough to get over the idea of something just instantly turning into a bonsai versus is that really the best tree within the tree. And so that's why I'm trying to give it its due diligence and just clean it out first and say, okay, what do we really see here? I haven't messed with this tree really at all. Other than some rudimentary pruning here and there every once in a while. So just to kind of get it where it is. But I like to let them grow and then look at them fresh a few years down the way. And so, am I just wanting something that looks good now? Am I wanting something because I have a style that I've been leaning towards consistently as of late? Or is that really the best option for the tree? And so if I come in and just say, well, that's what I want, so that's what I'm going to do, it wouldn't necessarily feel right with a decent piece of material like this. Just feels definitely would need an angle change, and I don't think up is the way, because if as we pull it up, this gets straighter and more awkward. So if we pull it down, ooh, there's some decay in this root, so the dead vein actually goes down in here. You can see it. It's starting to be right where my thumb is. You can see a little bit of white in there. So it's interesting, we'll have a gin that goes up and it comes right up through the middle, up this way through the center of that trunk. But as I'm pulling, it's kind of separating from the bark. Anyway, it's all right. So if we drop down, this would just need to come down a little bit. So we have our counterbalance branch, we have our apex, and then we'd be able to do enough with this to make a nice semi-cascade. Just flattening out those pads and wiring them, you know, to fit the design. We're going to start there. So here's the next question: is if we drop it down, are we able to incorporate this as a gin? Right? It would look funky sticking up. Hey, there's only one way to find out. So these are going to come off. It's never a waste of time if you end up taking off a branch that you did a little work on. It's experience, it's practice, etc. I mentioned a couple times before when I was learning during grad school, you know, I didn't have a large bonsai budget, we'll say. And so what I'd do is I'd go to a nursery and just shop their cheap stuff. And every time I'd prune a branch off, I'd practice, I'd put it in the vise and I'd practice wiring it, just so I could get the reps on wiring. So it's never a waste to be working on a tree and come in and end up cutting it all off, or a portion of it. It's kind of just a mess. There we go. Nice growth in there. Now I'm going to want to take that off as well. So while I'm in here with the loppers, I'll do that. Okay. Leaving these little scraggly bits here, because if we do have a gin or a deadwood branch, then it will be great and very natural to have those little bits on there. There we go. That should give us enough of a view. There, that's a nice piece. Enough of a view to see what this would look like if we actually kept it as a gin or if we went another direction. So do we like that, bring it forward a bit, see that trunk line, and drop it down. Only thing is, this comes up, so that's not bad as a gin over here, because if this comes up and back, you get the insinuation of the growth, but then whatever is making this tree cascade also, as that grew up, impacted that and killed it off. This would come out, shorten that up. Won't let that run away from us there. I can't decide. I really like, let me see if I have something to cover this up with. I'll just scoot it off camera, maybe. Aha! I knew I'd have something. What if that's your whole tree? It's a little bit more in proportion, I think, with the trunk size. Adrian, you're the only one out there that's been commenting. See what you think. But it's the only thing that really draws me to this is when we have the whole tree from here to here. That whole semi-cascading branch is the same diameter. There's no taper. You get taper from here to here. There's a taper point right here, but then all the way out until you get to this branch. There's no taper. So the options are really pulling that down, semi-cascade. Or maybe we get rid of this too, and this is our tree. Shorten this up, thin it out, apex, defining branch, gen all of this. Looks a little boring. Always thinking scale, right? See, that's what drew me to it in the beginning when I sat down with the tree, and I hadn't really looked at it much. And what I looked at was, well, I'm gonna have this nice sweeping tree, and then put a little rock under there or something like that. And then I sat down with it, and then I saw that great trunk and this nice branch, and really just creating individual pads, putting like 5 or 6 pads here. You've got a great back branch. Oh, sorry. Great back branch here and here. And there's even one coming off right here, coming off of this back branch. It's going to give you, look right here. Yep. It's going to give you that counterbalance. And the canopy, the apical branch, really covers your left hand side for y'all, your right hand side, and I think it just works so much better than it feels forced to do a cascade. Or it comes this way, and see, but anytime I stand it up like this gets more vertical in the trunk, and that's the bother for me. But if we could, instead of going all the way to here, let's take it back to this one and see if this gives us a better semi-cascade. Always knowing that we have this tree. Not that I want to force the semi-cascade, but I want to give everything its due diligence here. I like that neutral answer too, though. Always thinking scale, right? I like pushing things to the limit a little bit. So does it change if we bring it to this side as the front? It really is an interesting tree with a very plain trunk for something that could have a lot of interest, but you know what? I've talked about it long enough, and I'm really feeling like we're forcing the issue trying to make something that the tree's not. When something stands out to you that clear, you kind of have to just go with it. Especially when it's kind of spur of the moment. Now the question is, how much of this do we keep as gin? Not a lot. So instead of just sawing this off, I'm going to chew at it a little bit with my knob cutters. To split apart some of that tissue to see if I can get a good gin. Oh, there we go. If it doesn't work, no harm, no foul. We can always cut it, paste it, let it heal up. It's a scarless trunk. Yeah. Thanks. I'm glad I'm justified. I really think the scale works out, especially with the taper on this apical branch. It feels really good. I just wouldn't have, if I just came in and was like, hey, this is what we're doing right away, it wouldn't have felt right. Because I needed to work through it, I think, to get that done. We'll see if there's any. The gin can always come off, so we'll see. We'll see how it looks. Do this the right way. Score it there. Because, again, this shari, or this split right down the center. Let's see what we got. Kind of see right here. That dead vein right down the center. Maybe we can get it, if we clear that out, to come up and go through to that gin coming out. So that'll be a little bit of work. But we'll see what we can do. Some interesting branching here, which is why I kept this much of the trunk rather than just a little nub. So if we can incorporate that into a more interesting gin rather than, like, obviously he made a giant branch cut and just ginned it into, there's some intricacies there and some interest, then that'll be a little bit better. What I usually do with my gin is pull off all the bark, because it's easier to get the bark off while it's live when you kill off the branch than when it actually dies. And then once it's dried out, after a while, I'll come in and I'll just grab the ends and I'll twist and I'll tear and I'll do the dyeing thing. Shear too much off the back there. Let's see if we can connect that to this front portion. Beautiful. We could, I don't know if I'm brave enough for that today. If everything on what's left of the tree. Oh, great question, Jonathan. I'll get right to it. But just real quick, if everything on this portion of the tree comes through this vein on the left side of that fissure down the center, then we could actually make this whole left side, kill off that whole trunk, and then that would make an even more dramatic statement. However, I really like the thickness of the trunk here, transitioning into, again, like it was mentioned, into the taper and the scale of this tree. So I don't necessarily want to do that, right? Make it look just like a tiny tree. We want it to look like a giant tree that was miniaturized. So the creation of gin and shari, it's aesthetic, of course, but everything in bonsai should have function and aesthetic. One of the best things is borers like to get in between the plates of the flaky bark on junipers, and they'll enter where it's easiest. So one thing is, if you have a place that's designated where the live and the dead meet, the borers will go into that area and you'll see the holes easier. So as you keep it cleaned out and you can see the meeting place, the nexus of the living and dead tissue, then that's because it's the easiest place for the borers to get into the tree, that's what they'll do. And you'll see it before there's negative effects and before they can kill your tree off. So it looks nice, and we'll bleach it with lime sulfur after it dries so it'll get that stark white. But it's kind of just one of those things that has kept on, but it does have a functional aspect. Some people are like, oh, I love the dramatic deadwood, and some people are like, take it or leave it. I've noticed that it often depends on where you're from. Because it can be a regional thing. You don't get a lot of dramatic deadwood here in North Mississippi. It's just one of those things. Usually see it in higher elevations or with extreme winters. Although you can get deadwood from various natural effects. So, you never know. You'll see the top. I noticed something today with the flat top loblollies is that I think I figured out why they go flat top rather than a cone is because often the tops, and it may be beetles, I don't know, but the tops will die and the rest won't. And then eventually the vertical branching from those now apical branches will kind of dome out, and it'll just be flat instead of conical. So it's a really fascinating look. And I mean, it's just anecdotal, but to see something like that develop could be really interesting, and see if there's some consistency across that. Yeah, we'll be able to work in and get that shari carved out. If we have time today, we'll do it. We'll see. All right. So now we can zoom in. We don't have that giant mass, and you'll be able to see the tree a little better. So here's what we're dealing with now. Fairly dramatic before and after, which is kind of what you go for sometimes, but that wasn't the intent. It was the circumstance. And just go back to cleaning this portion of the tree. So cleaning up the bottoms. Interestingly enough, this portion of the tree also has the most, the least juvenile foliage. So it seems like it's a little bit the healthiest portion of the tree as far as that goes. We're going to see how we can distinguish and define these pads in here for styling in the fall months. If there are weaker portions, I really won't be pruning too much off because I want them to gain vigor. It's all about energy management at this time of year and keeping your trees alive in the heat. But sorry about the creaking. I've got to lean over and see the tree from where y'all see it without you having to look at the side of a tree the whole time. So these are up a little high. They'll move down in the future. So with that in mind, I'm going to clear out because I don't want photosynthetic redundancy, right? If these are laying down, I don't need a lot of inner growth back here on these branches. So I'm going to clear a little bit of that out. Most of it's crotch growth anyway, so I keep the tree looking clean and neat. That's an important portion of a branch right there. That really makes the tree, just this little guy. I mean, if that goes away, you could spread stuff out, thin it out, but I really like the thickness of the canopy. This will move forward here. This may or may not be necessary, but right now that's a decision that we don't have to make. There's no detriment that it's causing to the tree, and it may come in handy in case something funky happens with another portion. You know, I've had trees off of branches off of big trees fall and break branches off of stuff. So I'm never above leaving things on for just in case measures. It's a little sparse back here, so I'm not going to be too keen on pruning a bunch of stuff off. All right, you can see on the back, this will probably come down just to round out the canopy. And I've got other branches that can come and will develop and fill out the apex on the top. So we also have all of these little adventitious, what were suckers. That one's right in the curve, so we want to get rid of that one. But something like this developing right here and filling in this zone will be fantastic. So we're going to let those go, do their thing. Again, if it's on the inside of a curve, I'm going to get rid of it there. But we're going to let these kind of fill out, have a good time. Make one more little gym there, make it cohesive. Score it, pinch with the pliers, the bark comes right off. There we go. Looks a little better. Cleaning up those pads with a little bit of development. This branch right here will stick out, or maybe we just angle it a bit. That feels a little disjunctured. I like that as the front better. Yeah, the tree's really showing up now. It's a fun one. More exciting than I anticipated, to be honest. I thought it'd kind of just be a plain old, here's how you clean out a tree, and then it turned into something really fun. I'm eyeing my pots over there to see if I have something to... A round pot would look great. even put it on a stone, especially with this drama. You could really make it exciting. There, I mean, with this down that way. Again, I'm not going to wire this out. There's not a ton to be wired. Just pull everything down a little bit. Right? Round these out. Get some pad separation. And it's a tree. A few more bits off the bottom of these branches. We're set to go. Really just being nitpicky, but I'm going to keep the apex in check because these two branches right here we really want to fill out. If they don't respond like we want them to, if these went away, it's not the end of the world. We bring this in and it fills that gap, and then we've got boom, boom, boom. Still have the back. I don't necessarily want to take them off because I'd love a really full dense canopy on this. And this here would allow us to bring this up a bit to add an extra stair step in to really fill that out instead of just 1, 2, 3, to have a fourth or a 1, 2.1 or 2A, 2B, and then 3 would be really nice. It would help keep the asymmetry in there rather than having these kind of even shelves. It'd have a little stagger in it, which would look really nice. All right. So there's the big drama for today. Really fun tree. All right, we'll get it to. It's fairly large. I mean, it's in a 3-gallon pot, but it's a decent sized trunk. So to really pare it all down to something like this was really fun. Maybe we'll exaggerate that taper. Give me 1 second. We'll exaggerate that taper with some shari creation here. We'll take it down a little bit, so instead of it being just a stark line, sorry, my arm's right in front of the camera the whole time. Instead of it being a stark line, we'll taper it down, and it'll make it look like the trunk tapers quite a bit more than it actually does. If we get it at the right angle. Nub bark there. Okay. Right now it looks like it's got much better taper from the thickness of the base, and we artificially infer that taper from thick to thin to thinnest as it moves up the tree. Just a little sleight of hand on the use of shari and gin to falsely create that taper, instead of what we were looking at before was this, right? Now we've got nice delicate movement. So that was much more exciting than I anticipated, so hooray. I'm gonna mess with these 2 little junipers, pardon me as I reach across. Set on the table there. I'm going to take y'all back just a bit so that you can actually see what's going on. And lower you down. There we go. Yeah, it was pretty close to transitioning into finished. That's what happens when trees are kind of growing on their own for a long time. It's so I was formerly a professor, and I would always tell students, write at least a third more than you're going to use. You know, if not double, because it's writing is a process and editing is a process, and it's the same kind of with bonsai. Is let the tree grow out, because it's so much better to work back, right? To have branching and foliage and everything that you need to work with will give you a much finer tree than kind of stretching it. It's like, oh, how big can I make the margins? I'm going to make the font increase by 0.5, right, to try and fill up that space. And you can always tell when somebody's trying to fill up the space. Now I'm talking about trees. Oh, well, I guess papers as well. You can always tell when someone's trying to just fill up the space rather than actually, you know, having the tree emerge from what's there and develop it into a bonsai. So this is just madness. But again, who's going to turn down some free material? And turn it into something fun. So my whole plan today was just to do these two little things. I've got a couple. Here's the other one. The other one looks a little bit more promising, but I was just going to do these, and then I thought, maybe I'll handle that big guy. Ah, the glimpse of the trunk. There it is. Moss covered, of course. Oh, well, it comes off pretty easy. I was going to grab my scraper, but it peeled off. It's a nice thick trunk. I think it's been in here for like 5 or 6 years. The other one's actually busted out of the pot with its roots. But this is from one of these is where this came from. So you can really pull these back into nice little trees. There you can see the trunk a little better. Right, into nice little trees given enough time. This is one of those where it's like to grow this out from something that, like a whip, would have been painstaking. But to have something big relatively and prune it out and kind of let the tree emerge is much more interesting and exciting. That tree did not look that nice when I initially did it. It had, I think, 2 little sprigs. I think it had like 6 sprigs on 3 little main branches that I had left, and that was it. And it's now filled out. So it's one of those fun little projects just to see how it works out. So this I'm going to handle rather liberally. Knowing that this one may not be as instant as far as a finished bonsai look, but it will be set up for a great future. Getting rid of stuff I know I definitely don't need here. Spindly, gangly things. Hey, look at that. Trying to see if I can get a glimpse of the trunk in there. And which way it goes. It's rather flowy. It's got a lot of twists and turns. I almost think I'm going to get rid of this branch, but then, I knew it. It's got the branch with all the foliage on it. But it's the least interesting branch. It's quite the day for drama, apparently. That's often how junipers work, though. They're very dramatic trees. I've got a bunch of foliage down here that I know I'm going to be able to cut back to, so I'm not worried about a chop like that at all. Ouch. The biggest thing is I want to make sure that I've got somewhere shady to put this thing as it grows out. Not full shade, but you know, that afternoon blazing sun is going to do a number on this guy. Maybe that's the tree. Maybe the tree's here. Really interesting trunk. Maybe you can see it. Kind of starts here and it spirals. Just, I don't like this one bit. Not the tree, that piece of the tree. But these are the kind of things that you run the experiments on. I don't want it coming over that. I want it to be a little more upright, because what I'll do is I'll put some interesting movement into this. We don't want it to come back this way because that will make a big circle, right? Circles catch the eye. Yeah, it really is. It's like the best surprise ever when you get a piece of material and it's just like, woo, something to play with. So yeah, like I was saying, we don't want to this coming this direction. We need to take all this off because we don't want to form that circle there. Pull a little closer. That catches the eye and it's tough on the composition, but it's plenty flexible. We'll swing it around this way. And maybe that's not the front. Maybe the front's somewhere over here and we bring it this way and create the tree from that. But I'm thinking this is going to be a really compact tree, and most of what you're seeing here is not going to be on the final tree anyway. That's going to be there. But just to cut this back, I mean, this is like maybe a 3-year project, kind of seeing what this tree's made of. It's a very different example from the one before. But this thing is going to come back with a vengeance, and it is going to be a ball of mess again in no time. And maybe it's something that tips over. And I always like to play with an angle change. So if it seems like, oh, you just tip everything over every time, it's like, well, if you want to explore all the potential possibilities, all the potentialities, you got to turn the tree over and look at it from every direction. If we did this, we'd get rid of this gin, and we'd gin all that. But now we want all this to live, so we got to reduce all the foliage up here. Oop, found it. Aha. Found the branch that I needed right here. pull that back. Yeah, this is definitely a rough draft, but it's got the makings. I mean, down low, that little diamond in the rough kind of stuff. You've got these funky branches to create some low gin. So if this fills out, and it's just, I mean, maybe this comes way back, right? And it's just a nub, or maybe it goes away completely. But this side, and maybe just a slight angle change. I don't know. I'm kind of seeing this as the front. Tilts forward for sure, so you get a little verticality. Also gets rid of your circle problem for the most part, but this is the low branch. This will develop nicely into, there's a little back bud right here that, you know what, if I want it to go to that, might as well just make that the tree, right? But tip it over just a bit, create this branch here. Apex will be somewhere in this area, and these will flow, and it'll just be a low, put it in a nice oval pot, a little off center, be just a nice low canopy tree, just a wide sprawling, almost like a live oak. When you go to Houston, South Carolina, those areas, just those sprawling low oaks. That could be really nice. Get rid of those and do that, because this will be a great gin sticking out the top. I'm going to go ahead and make all those and then let this thing go crazy. Thanks. Yeah, I think that's one of my rare gifts, as far as that goes, is being able to kind of see it. I've had trees that I've brought home and my wife's been like, why in the world did you get that thing? And then a few years later I'll be like, I had my fun, I'll sell it. She's like, you can't get rid of that tree, it's my favorite. I'm like, do you remember what tree this is? It's like, no, it's that one you said that was terribly ugly and you didn't even know why I brought it home. So it's always fun to transform these. So being able to kind of see the future and coax it out of the tree is one of the things that I love about bonsai. And it does come with practice. It's just looking at trees all the time, whether it's a magazine or at shows or on a hike, and everywhere you go, just always looking at trees. And seeing the potential of possibility for, there are trees that look like that. Oh, if I wanted to make that tree, this is what would need to happen. Or this tree's got funky branching. Hey, I've seen a tree with funky branching like that. Let me see if it can mimic that. And so just all the time. It's a rare vacation or trip anywhere that I get to go without, or my family goes without me talking about trees in one way, shape, or form. It's just a big bright hand in the way in it. I'm trying to make that gin. But a fun little tree. Nice little project to work on. And the last little gin there. There we go. And just again to reiterate, this essentially looked like this a year ago. So, I mean, it may now still look like a little piece, but that much development can happen on one of these little junipers. I mean, yeah, it's still rudimentary. I've got no secondary branching. However, as soon as there's lignification, another year from now, this thing will be, I mean, not a great show, but local show ready. How's that sound? Right? You put this in a nice little local show or in a 3 or 5 point Shohin display, and it'd fit right in, right? So the fact that this could be where that is a year from now is fantastic. So there's one down. As far as the little ones go, 2 total. We got 1 more to go here. Now I was going to work on a hinoki, but it is getting really hot in the workshop here. So I may save it for next week. I know that this broken, busted out container is going to drive me nuts. So I'm just going to put that down. Take it out of there. Much greater semblance of some sort of trunk, but it goes up and then it splits in 2 different directions. Right there. Right out of the base. So we got to make a decision. Which way are we going to go? Or do we stand at a vertical and one of those 2 trunks is, you guessed it, the primary branch, right? So we'll see. Let me get some of this moss off. Let me wheel and deal these scissors a little bit. Because again, this is not a cleaning thing. We're not going through cleaning out pads because, as you saw last time, there's no pad that's going to be left on the tree. This is going to be pulled way, way back. There's nothing quite remarkable about much of any of this except that it's a tree. Sometimes I just prune a few things off just to get used to the tree. So if you're like, oh, you're not going to keep any of that, why are you cutting it? Yeah, it helps you see a little better. It helps you stay in the groove kind of thing. And then we could use just this single one and drop it way down. I like the taper and the branches on this trunk, whereas this has a straight line, so that one's coming off. It's a really interesting gin, though. Really interesting gin. It's a little too rigid and straight for using it as a cascade. So. Unfortunately. There's that. This is a nice little trunk on there. It's, I mean, twice the width of my thumb almost. 1.5. So it's, I mean, it's a decent looking little trunk. Let's see, pull a little of that moss away. Okay. that gin took a little longer than I expected. It is larger. There we go. Definitely more room to play on this side as far as branching goes. Maybe, see, maybe we pull that down. This is a little more of a standard looking tree, nothing too dramatic, as we just cut off half the tree. But style wise, nothing too dramatic, but the base isn't there. I'm not feeling cascade. It's a nice branch that comes down. We'll see. This is a really, I thought the other one would be a tougher one to use with how the trunks were, but this one seems, I've looked at them just a little bit over the past couple days since I got them, but not really thought about them too much, and so this one's really much trickier, but I do like the low branching. I think there's a tree in here somewhere, and it may just be a cutback, but not having something in mind just yet. Can't be that wild with it, but I do see something a little more upright. That would be probably getting rid of most of this. See if we get rid of, if we plant it here and then pull these branches down, you can see where they go. This would swing over and up. There it is. There it is. This one will definitely require quite a bit of wire. Well, quite a bit of bending, we'll say. But if that flattens out, that's the defining branch pushing the direction to the left. This will come back this way. And we're going to reduce that. And this branch will be here. And then you get a nice push to the left and then back across, and your apex is right there. And the soil, of course, will be pulled down, but this up and then dramatic turn and angle of this initial branch, let me pull it up right there, this angle right here as we tip it. It's just flat here and inconspicuous. Once we turn it and straighten out this trunk, this becomes a dramatic angle. And it's reflected. If we pull this here, you get the angle again right here. If you pull this down, you get the angle again here. And then boom, zigzag up to the rest of the tree. So we're going to reduce this foliage down. Let this tree rock out. There we go. Leave that. Leave that and that. Okay. There's just more dead stuff up here. We don't want this overtaking the whole tree. Ooh, there's a nice secondary branch right. So we're going to prune it back. Give it space to do its thing. Okay, so it doesn't look like much, but once we get this here, hand there, we'll have primary branch here, taper up, stair step, boom, boom. These will fill in nicely. A little counter branch here, and then the continuation of the trunk right here. It won't be half bad. So we're going to let that just grow on its own. May not be as exciting and attractive as what we were looking at earlier, but really, really great opportunity right now to work on, let me grab that big one again, to work on some junipers to manage that growth, redistribute energy, and then on some instances make really dramatic trees. So I'm glad this one finally came together. It was a little tricky, but not bad work for what, an hour and a bit. Thanks for sticking with me. This was great. I'll probably do Hinoki next week. We've got another kind of funky tree to work with. We'll see how that goes, but if not, we'll find something to do in the garden. It's always a good time. But thanks again. Appreciate it. See y'all next week. Bonsai on, y'all.